She was sentenced to die in front of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, and she did. Her heart stopped. Her body broke. The council celebrated. But 37 minutes later, she opened her eyes, and the universe hasn't been the same since. This isn't a story about survival. It's a story about what happens when death becomes your teacher, and humanity becomes unstoppable. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move toward this wonderful story. The trial chamber floated in orbit around a dying white star, its walls made of dark matter alloy and pulsing with a faint glow that reflected the nervous energy inside. Creatures from over 300 species had gathered, filling the tiered seats carved into the circular hall. Some floated, some slithered, others clicked or hummed as they waited. This was not a normal court session. Today was meant to be a spectacle. At the center of the chamber, suspended within a levitating prism of soft blue light, was a human, Sela Dorn. She looked small, fragile, and incredibly still. Her limbs were held by gravitic restraints, but she didn't struggle. Her head was raised, her eyes alert. There was no fear on her face, only curiosity. Some whispered among themselves that this expression was common in humans, that they often looked calm even when facing doom. Others thought it was a trick, a final act of arrogance before judgment. High Arbiter Halrex, a towering being of liquid stone and fire, stepped into the spotlight. His voice rumbled through the chamber, echoed by a network of translators. Today we prove to the galaxy that defiance has no reward. This human, this Sela Dorn, dared to speak against the interstellar concordium. She reached across borders, offering peace and unity to rising civilizations. She disrupted the order we've maintained for millennia, and for this she will be corrected. He didn't use the word executed. In the concordium, death was too ordinary a term. What awaited Sela was a procedure called excision, a complete erasure of mind, body, and energy. Every spark of her being would be dismantled, catalogued, and used as data for the concordium's growing library of conquered species. Her pain, if she showed any, would be monitored and shared across the council chambers for study. No one had ever survived it. Several council members nodded in agreement. Others hissed or flashed lights in approval. The aliens of the Moraine cluster exhaled vapors of satisfaction, while the tri-brained Narthans blinked in unison. From the shadows, a few watched Sela with something close to doubt. There had been whispers. Earth's people had vanished before, only to reappear. Their world had been destroyed and rebuilt. Their biology was strange, their emotions unpredictable. But most chose to ignore the unease. Humans were emotional, short-lived creatures. Surely they could be broken. Sela spoke then, softly, but clearly. You've already lost, you know. Her voice, human and small, managed to echo through the hall. The translators hesitated, unsure how to interpret the tone, half amusement, half warning. Halrex stiffened. You will be silent. I've been silent long enough, Sela replied, smiling faintly. But it's okay. You'll understand soon. The chamber buzzed. Was this madness or courage, to speak so lightly in the face of complete destruction? The tribunal's lead technician, a spider-limbed being named Juvar, approached the control panel and activated the excision sequence. Sela's containment field shimmered as bright filaments descended around her. Needles of energy aligned with the nerves in her body. She didn't flinch. Beginning neural separation, Juvar announced. Stage 1 engaged. The energy touched her, and for a moment nothing happened. Then her body jerked slightly, her fingers curling. Her heart rate rose by only a small amount, less than expected. Pain was being registered, but it wasn't overwhelming her. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. Instead, Sela breathed in slowly and closed her eyes, as if listening to music only she could hear. Observers exchanged nervous glances. Halrex narrowed his molten eyes. Increase intensity. Stage 2 commenced. The probes began to pull data from her nervous system, converting her thoughts into patterns for analysis. The chamber's air grew heavy with static. Lights flickered, but the system confirmed the process was stable. Vital signs steady, Juvar said with a touch of disbelief. Neural patterns are resisting capture. Halrex stepped forward. Impossible. No species has resisted excision. One of the delegates, a feathered scholar from the Ilum hive, leaned in. Perhaps humans are different. She's delaying, another scoffed. It's psychological, just a mind trick. The chamber dimmed as the third stage initiated. Sella's body convulsed slightly. Her breathing slowed. Her heartbeat began to fade. The system prepared for final extraction, and then at the exact 37-minute mark, her vital signs flatlined. She was dead. The silence that followed was deep. Even the usual hum of machinery seemed to hesitate. Halrex finally raised his arms and spoke. It is done. Let the record show that humanity's challenge to the Concordium has ended. Council. Members released celebratory pheromones. Some clapped, others vibrated in joy. The tribunal systems began the shutdown process, preparing for the standard disposal. But as the lights returned to full brightness, a soft glow appeared around Sella's body. Faint at first, it grew steadily brighter. Her skin, pale in death, now shimmered faintly with a golden hue. Juvar froze. Residual energy. Halrex waved a dismissive hand. Release it to the void. End this. But before the probes could begin their final task, the energy around Sella pulsed. Her body lifted an inch, then 2. The containment field surged. System malfunction, Juvar shouted. No, whispered the Ilum delegate. It's her. Sella Dorn's eyes opened. The same calm smile played on her lips. And this time when she spoke, her voice didn't come from her mouth. It came from everywhere. You gave me 37 minutes. I used them well. The chamber froze as Sella Dorn opened. Her eyes. It was impossible. She had died. Every instrument confirmed it. Her heartbeat had stopped. Her brain waves had gone flat. The tribunal's systems had already begun cataloging her final moments for archival purposes. But there she was, floating gently in the containment prism, her body glowing faintly with golden light, her eyes calm and aware. The gathered council, members, leaders, scientists, and warriors from across the galaxy, stared in stunned silence. Not a single one moved. Not even High Arbiter Halrex, who had just declared her execution complete. Then came her voice. Not loud, not angry, but clear and steady. You gave me 37 minutes, she said. I used them well. Her words echoed through the chamber, though her mouth didn't move. The translators didn't activate this time. No one could explain how her voice reached their ears, bypassing language and technology. Juvar, the lead technician, backed away from his panel. There's no power source, he muttered. The containment fields collapsed. The restraints aren't holding her anymore. Halrex regained his composure, if only briefly. This is an illusion, he snapped. A residual energy flare. A reflex. Shut it down. But Sella didn't flicker. She didn't vanish. Instead, she floated upward, the shattered restraints now gently orbiting her body like rings around a planet. She turned slowly in the air, her gaze scanning the chamber. Wherever she looked, instruments glitched, lights dimmed, and organic beings flinched, feeling something ancient stir in their cores, something not alien, but deeply human. The moraine. Vapor creatures hissed in alarm as the temperature in the chamber dropped. The walls, once infused with steady neutron star heat, were now cold to the touch. The gravity fluctuated. Delegates began to float slightly above their seats before the artificial stabilizers kicked back in. Nothing like this had ever happened in tribunal history. Juvar's voice shook. Her cells, they're still changing. I'm seeing structures that don't exist in any known biology. Quantum layers and recursive DNA loops, and I don't understand. Sella extended one hand and light flowed from her fingertips. Not beams, not lasers, but something softer. alive like a stream of memories turned into light. Where the light passed, the chamber's data screens began to flicker with images, not of the execution, but of Earth, storms over oceans, children laughing in parks, soldiers in muddy trenches, scientists staring into telescopes, pain, joy, hope, chaos, all human. "She's broadcasting history," whispered a delegate from the silicate hive worlds. "But it's more than that. We're feeling it," Sela's voice returned. "You thought pain would break me. You didn't realize it would unlock me. Humanity didn't become strong in spite of suffering. We became strong because of it. Every tragedy gave us something. Every failure taught us more than success ever could." Halrex finally stepped forward again, his fiery form glowing with fury. "You were sentenced, judged, executed. This resurrection, this disruption, is a violation of every law in this galaxy." Sela looked at him. "Then perhaps your laws are too small." Without warning, a ripple of energy pulsed outward from her body. Instruments shattered. Several containment drones exploded. The floor cracked in a clean spiral beneath the prism. A wave of force passed through every being present, not physical but emotional. Memories not their own flickered in their minds, moments of loss, of triumph, of sacrifice. Some cried out, others fell silent. The council guards rushed in, activating emergency suppression weapons, devices capable of erasing thought patterns or freezing neural function. They fired. The beams stopped midair, hovered, then twisted into shapes, words, symbols, melodies. They drifted around Sela before fading. Juvar was nearly whispering now. Her body, her energy, it's syncing with something outside this dimension. We're detecting anomalies in the timeline, changes in local causality. Even the concept of past is becoming unstable. One of the scholars cried out, "She's becoming a fixed point in time." Sela smiled again. "You tried to erase me. You forgot that humans have lived through their own destruction more than once. We remember. We rebuild. We rise again." Halrex raised his arms in defiance. "You will not undo the order we have built. You are one species and we are 1,000. Sela's gaze burned brighter. "Then tell me, how many of your 1,000 ever died and came back stronger?" Another pulse of energy filled the room, this time warm, radiant like sunlight at dawn. All machinery stopped functioning. Emergency sirens tried to wail, but their sound warped into a lullaby. The quantum swimmers, creatures who lived between dimensions, phased in and out of reality, confused and terrified. One voice finally broke the silence. It belonged to the youngest member of the council, a soft-skinned diplomat from the Ulan system. "We don't know what she is anymore," they whispered. "But she's not like us. She's not even like how she was." Sela looked toward them with kindness. "That's true. I'm not what I was, and neither will you be." The chamber's walls flickered with projections of alternate futures. Worlds healed, species freed, an end to conquest. A beginning of something new. Halrex gave one last command. "Destroy her." But nothing answered. The weapons refused to fire. The technology refused to obey. The tribunal was no longer in control. Sela Dorn had died, and something far greater had taken her place. The light surrounding Sela Dorn grew brighter, pushing past natural color into something that couldn't be named. It wasn't just light, it was feeling, thought, memory, and presence all at once. She no longer floated because of the containment field. That had failed minutes ago. Now she hovered simply because the laws of gravity no longer applied to her, or perhaps she had simply chosen to ignore them. The council chamber, once a fortress of cold judgment and absolute control, had become something else entirely. Quiet, fragile, and full of fear. None of the council members spoke now. Even High Arbiter Halrex, once proud and loud, stood frozen, his stone-like face unreadable. Around him, ancient beings from powerful civilizations looked on with expressions that ranged from awe to terror. This was not a malfunction. This was not a trick. Something had happened to the human they had condemned. something they could not explain. Sela looked around at the chamber, her glowing eyes calm, even gentle, but there was a strange intensity in her gaze, the kind that made others look away without understanding why. She lifted her hand, and without any visible effort, the shattered pieces of her restraints formed into a spinning ring of light around her wrist. The shards moved smoothly, humming with power. She had taken what was meant to hold her and turned it into something beautiful. Halrex finally spoke, though his voice was low and uncertain. "What are you?" Sela tilted her head slightly, thinking. "I'm still me," she said. "But I'm also more. You tried to destroy me. Instead, you showed me the truth." A murmur ran through the chamber. The silicate beings clicked in distress. The moraine mist creatures withdrew to the corners of the room, their forms shrinking. Juvar, the technician, had long since stopped touching his controls. He just watched now, whispering numbers to himself as if that could protect him. "You, see?" Sela continued, her voice soft but steady. "You thought pain would erase me. You thought death would silence me. But humans, we're made of stories. We carry every hurt, every loss, and we turn it into something else. You don't understand that because you've only ever known power. You've never needed to grow." Her body shimmered again. Patterns ran across her skin like stardust flowing through veins. When she moved, her motion left behind trails of light that pulsed with rhythm, like music played through color. Every step she took seemed to rewrite the space around her, bending it to her will without effort or force. One of the delegates, a wide-eyed creature with scales of flowing silver, tried to activate a security override. His console sparked and burst into harmless glitter. Another tried to call for help using a mental beacon, only to find the signal redirected into a gentle breeze inside the chamber. Sela raised both hands now. The air vibrated. From the chamber walls, scenes began to play out. Not projections, but memories pulled from the minds of those present. Images of suffering. Entire civilizations broken under the Concordium's rule. Families torn apart. Cultures erased. Names forgotten. These weren't random moments. These were the very acts the Council had carried out, always believing it was, for the greater order. Now every leader in the room was forced to witness their own history through the eyes of the victims. Some screamed, some turned away, some simply wept. Sela didn't judge. She didn't accuse. She just showed the truth. "You believed yourselves gods," she said, her voice echoing from every surface. "You wrote laws to justify pain. You built systems to keep power in your hands. And when someone like me tried to bring peace, you responded with fear." Halrex stepped forward again, trembling with a kind of pride that had begun to crack. "We created order," he said, trying to hold on to what little control he had left. "We saved the galaxy from chaos." "You confused silence with peace," Sela replied gently. "They're not the same." The containment chamber's design began to change. The harsh lights softened. The cold metal turned to wood and cloth, stone and color. The ceiling transformed into a swirling night sky, stars blinking above them. The walls shimmered with the echoes of music. Somehow the place of judgment had become a place of reflection. Delegates began to step forward, not with weapons, but with questions. A crystal-formed elder from the Andal Belt asked, "Can we change?" A gas-based being pulsed softly and whispered, "What comes next?" Sela smiled again. Not the mocking smile she had worn during her trial, but something real, warm, hopeful. "That's up to you," she said, "but I'll help, because now you know, you've seen, you've felt, and if there's one thing humans understand, it's that change always begins after the fall." The chamber grew quiet. No one ordered her destroyed. No one demanded control. There was nothing to fight against anymore. Sela Dorn had unbound herself from the rules of power and pain, and instead of taking revenge, she offered something far more terrifying to those who had ruled for so long: understanding. As she turned and walked across the air, leaving no footprints, only light, her voice drifted behind her like a melody. This isn't the end of your empire. It's the beginning of your story. 10,000 years had passed since Sela Dorn rose from death and changed the galaxy. The trial chamber where her execution was once held no longer existed in its old form. It had been transformed into something entirely unexpected, a theater. Not a court of judgment, not a place for politics or punishment, but a stage for stories. The former leaders of the Concordium, the once feared rulers of hundreds of worlds, now performed nightly shows beneath a ceiling of moving stars. The walls shimmered with memories, and every evening, the universe gathered to watch the performance of truth. Sela Dorn still existed, not as a ruler, not as a god, but as something much more mysterious. She appeared from time to time, sometimes in the audience, sometimes in the wings, and sometimes as a voice carried on the cosmic wind. She never forced anyone to obey her. She didn't give orders. She gave suggestions, told jokes, and occasionally rewrote the laws of physics just to see what happened. But mostly she watched and waited, and guided. The Concordium had become the theater of tomorrow, a traveling company that performed across galaxies. They told stories, not just their own, but those of every civilization they had once silenced. They acted out the pain they caused, the mistakes they made, and the lessons they were still learning. And somehow, instead of humiliation, they found healing. The theater had become a way to make peace, to show change, and to let others understand that no empire, no matter how powerful, was beyond growth. Each performance was different. Some were comedies, where former generals tripped over their lines and alien dignitaries burst into laughter. Others were tragedies, quiet and powerful, reminding everyone of what was lost. The audience was always full. Creatures of every shape, color, and dimension came to watch. Many brought their children, telling them, "These are the ones who once ruled with fear, but now they sing." Behind the scenes, the cast worked together as if they'd never been enemies. High Arbiter Halrex, now stage manager, wore a headset and barked directions with the same booming voice he once used for death sentences. Juvar, the former technician, handled the lighting, programming entire galaxies into dazzling light displays. The silicate delegates became costume designers, creating outfits from stardust and crystal. And though none of them ever said it out loud, they had grown to love their new roles. They didn't perform because they had to. That punishment had ended centuries ago. Sela had given them the choice long ago: return to ruling or continue telling stories. They chose the stage. Because over time, they realized that storytelling was more powerful than any fleet or weapon. A story could change hearts, a story could bring worlds together. A story could explain pain in a way that even the most stubborn mind could understand. The most popular show was called The 37-Minute Miracle. It told the story of Sela Dorn's trial and rebirth. It was rewritten often, each time with a new focus, sometimes about courage, sometimes about understanding, and sometimes just about the strange beauty of second chances. No matter how many times they performed it, the audience always held its breath when Sela's heart stopped, and always cheered when she opened her eyes again. Sela herself rarely took the stage, but when she did, the entire galaxy seemed to pause. Time bent slightly, and stars twinkled a little brighter. She never played herself. Instead, she played side characters: the quiet observer, the forgotten witness, the voice in the crowd. Her favorite role was the janitor who sweeps the stage before the show begins, humming softly to herself. Only the cleverest audience members ever recognized her. One day during rehearsal, Sela appeared in the wings holding a clipboard made of light. She wore a soft smile and a t-shirt that said, "Director of the Universe, unofficial." Halrex saw her and paused. "You're early," he said. "I like watching you all prepare," Sela replied. "It reminds me of how far you've come." He nodded slowly. "We were wrong. You were human," she said. "You made mistakes, but you chose to learn. That's what matters." She stepped onto the stage, looking out at the empty seats that would soon be filled. "Tonight's show will be special," she said. "We're telling the story of the day you all became something new. Juvar asked from the control booth. What's the title? Sela thought for a moment, then smiled. Let's call it The First Day of Forever. That night, as the curtains rose and the lights dimmed, the theater of tomorrow came alive once again. Across the stars, people watched and remembered. They cried. They laughed. They learned. And when the final scene ended, and the former conquerors stood together on stage, they bowed, not out of habit but out of gratitude. Sela clapped from the back of the theater, tears shining like comets in her eyes. Not for the performance, but for what it meant. In that moment, she knew the galaxy had truly changed. Not through war, not through fear, but through the oldest power of all, the power of a story told well.